All right, you magnificent bastards. Welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're going balls deep into Delta Force, the U.S. Army's most elite counterterrorism unit. If you're looking for bedtime stories, you're in the wrong fecking place. We're talking missions straight out of Hollywood, black ops shit, and enough classified intel to make your head explode. So buckle up, Buttercup, because we're about to drop some serious knowledge bombs. And to help us sift through all the bullshit and get to the real deal, we've got our resident expert on all things military and espionage.
Let's cut the crap and dive right in.
Damn right. So first things first. Where the hell did Delta Force even come from? I mean, the U.S. military's been kicking ass for centuries.
Yeah.
So why did they suddenly decide they needed this super secret elite unit?
Well, it all started back in the 1970s. The world was a pretty fucked up place back then. Terrorism was on the rise. And the U.S. was caught with its pants down. Think Munich Olympics massacre, hijackings, all that crazy shit. The powers that be realized they needed a dedicated counterterrorism unit. A group of guys who could handle the really hairy situations that regular troops just weren't trained for.
So basically they needed a squad of certified badasses who could swoop in and save the day when shit hit the fan.
Exactly. And it wasn't like the U.S. didn't have special forces units already. You had the Green Berets, the Rangers, all those guys. But they were mostly focused on unconventional warfare, training foreign troops and advising allies. They weren't really equipped or trained for direct action counterterrorism missions.
Makes sense. So who was the mastermind behind Delta Force? Was it some cigar-chomping general or a bunch of eggheads in the Pentagon?
Actually, it was a guy named Charles Beckwith, a total badass Green Beret and Vietnam War veteran. He'd seen firsthand how the British were running their Special Air Service, the SAS, and he was convinced that the U.S. needed a similar unit.
So Beckwith was basically saying, hey, those Brits are kicking ass with their SAS.
Yeah.
We need some of that action over here.
Pretty much. He saw the effectiveness of the SAS in hostage rescue counterterrorism, all those high-stakes missions, and he thought, why the F aren't we doing this?
I can imagine some stuffy general saying, but we have the Rangers, they're tough as nails. And Beckwith was just rolling his eyes.
Yeah, there was definitely resistance from the old guard. They thought Delta Force was unnecessary, that it would just complicate things. But Beckwith was persistent. He kept pushing his idea, and finally in 1977 he got the green light. Delta Force was officially born.
Okay, so we got this new unit, these elite ass-ats ready to kick some terrorist ass. What was their first big mission?
Well, their first real test came with the Iran hostage crisis in 1979. Remember that shit show?
Vaguely. Refresh my memory.
Okay, so a group of Iranian students stormed the U.S. embassy in Tehran and took 52 American diplomats and citizens hostage. It was a major international incident, and it dragged on for over a year. The Carter administration was desperate to get those hostages back, so they called in Delta Force.
All right, so Delta's first mission, rescue a bunch of hostages from a hostile country in the middle of a political shitstorm.
Sounds tense.
Intense is an understatement. The mission was called Operation Eagle Claw, and it was a total clusterfuck. They had all sorts of problems right from the start. Helicopter malfunctions, sandstorms, communication breakdowns, you name it, it went wrong. They had to abort the mission. And it was a huge blow to Delta Force's reputation.
Wait, seriously, they screwed it up. I thought these guys were supposed to be the best of the best.
They are, but even the best can make mistakes, especially when you're dealing with an operation as complex and risky as Eagle Claw.
Okay, but that must have pissed off some people. I mean, the hostages were still stuck in Iran, and Delta just fucked up their big rescue mission. Oh yeah, there was a lot of finger-pointing and blame going around. But ultimately, it was a learning experience. The military realized that they needed to improve their special operations capabilities if they wanted to avoid another Eagle Claw-type disaster.
So what happened next? Did they just scrap Delta Force and say, well, that was a dumb idea?
Hell no. They doubled down. They knew they needed a unit like Delta, so they used the Eagle Claw failure as a catalyst to make some serious changes. They invested in better equipment training and coordination. They created new units like the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, aka the Night Stalkers, to provide dedicated helicopter support for special operations missions. And they formed JSOC Joint Special Operations Command to oversee all these badass outfits and make sure they could work together seamlessly.
So basically they learned from their mistakes and came back stronger.
Exactly. Eagle Claw was a setback, but it ultimately led to the creation of a more robust and effective special operations community.
All right, so let's talk about Delta Force itself. Who the hell are these guys? They got to be some next-level motherfuckers, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about the cream of the crop. Most Delta operators are recruited from the 75th Ranger Regiment and Special Forces, guys who are already at the top of their game. They're the best of the best, and then some.
So like double badass.
Exactly. Think of it this way. The Rangers are the varsity team, Special Forces is the all-star team, and Delta Force is the goddamn Olympic team.
Okay, that makes sense. But how are they structured? What's the chain of command and all that jazz?
Well, like I said, everything about Delta is super classified. It's like trying to find Bigfoot's diary. But we do know it's modeled after the British SAS, with squadrons broken down into troops, and then into even smaller, highly specialized teams.
So small groups of super soldiers, each with their own unique skill sets, ready to tackle any mission anywhere in the world.
That's the gist of it. It's all about flexibility and adaptability. These guys are trained to operate in any environment. From jungles to deserts to urban warfare, they can blend in with the locals, speak multiple languages, and basically disappear into thin air when they need to.
Damn, they sound like ghosts with guns.
Pretty much. And that's what makes them so effective.
Okay, so let's say some crazy bastard out there, some adrenaline junkie with a death wish, actually wants to try out for this gig. What the hell would they be in for?
Oh, man, you gotta be seriously fucked in the head to even think about trying out for Delta.
In a good way, I assume.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. You gotta be willing to push yourself to the absolute limit, both physically and mentally. The selection process is notoriously brutal with an insane attrition rate.
Give me the gory details. What kind of torture do these guys have to go through?
All right, buckle up. It starts with physical tests that would make a Navy SEAL puke. We're talking endless push-ups, sit-ups, runs that feel like marathons, and obstacle courses designed by Satan himself.
Sounds like my worst nightmare. I'd be tapping out before the first push-up.
Yeah, most people would. But the physical stuff is just the beginning. They also have to go through intense land navigation challenges, where they're dropped in the middle of nowhere with nothing but a compass and a map, and have to find their way back.
Oh, fun. Lost in the woods with no food or water. Just what every aspiring Delta operator dreams of.
And did I mention the psychological evaluations? They're designed to weed out anyone who's even slightly unstable. They want guys who are cool under pressure, who can make life or death decisions in a split second without losing their shit.
Yeah, you definitely don't want a trigger-happy psycho running around with a gun.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But I bet they have some even crazier shit up their sleeves, right?
Oh, you know it. They save the best for last. It's called the long walk.
The long walk. Sounds ominous.
It is. It's a 40-mile march with a heavy-ass rucksack. No set time limit. Just pure mental and physical torture. They push these guys to their absolute breaking point to see who cracks.
Holy shit, that sounds brutal. I'm getting tired just thinking about it. And how many guys actually make it through all this hell?
Only a handful. We're talking single-digit percentages. The attrition rate is insane, but that's how they weed out the weak and find the guys who are truly Delta material, the ones who can handle anything.
Damn, talk about earning your stripes. So let's say you're one of the lucky few who survives selection. What kind of crazy-ass training do they go through?
Well, that's where the real fun begins. They go through a 6-month operator training course, where they basically become weaponized shadows.
Sounds intense. Lay it on me. What do they teach these guys?
They train in everything from advanced marksmanship and demolitions to hostage rescue and counterintelligence. They learn how to pick locks, blow shit up, disappear into crowds, and basically become the most dangerous men on the planet.
Dude, it sounds like these guys train for every messed up scenario imaginable.
They do, and they do it all with live ammunition and incredibly realistic scenarios. They're constantly pushing themselves to the limit because they know that in a real-world situation, their lives and the lives of others depend on it.
So they're not just tough. They're smart as hell, too.
Yeah.
They're basically walking, talking Swiss Army knives of death.
That's a pretty accurate description. These guys are highly intelligent, resourceful, and adaptable. They're trained to think outside the box to improvise and to overcome any obstacle.
Okay, so they're badass warriors. But they're also super secretive. What's the deal with all that? Are they allowed to talk about their work? Do they walk around in uniform all the time? Or are they more like undercover agents?
Well, as you can imagine, information about Delta Force is tightly controlled. Even their families often don't know the specifics of their work. But one thing that sets them apart from regular soldiers is that they're given a lot of autonomy in the field. They don't have to worry about all the usual military bullshit and regulations.
So they're kind of like cowboys, making their own rules.
In a way, yeah. They're allowed to grow beards, have longer hair, and basically look less military to blend in. They need to be able to operate in all sorts of environments, and that often means looking like they belong there.
So if you see some bearded dude at Starbucks looking all intense,
Uh-huh.
he could be a Delta operator.
You never know. It's all part of their mystique.
All right, so we've covered their origins, their structure, their training, and their lifestyle. They're basically like real-life ninjas trained to be silent and deadly. But let's get to the good stuff, the missions. What are some of the operations these guys have actually pulled off? I know most of it is top secret, but give us a taste.
Well, you're right. A lot of what Delta does is classified. But there are a few missions that have become public knowledge, operations that have earned them a reputation as one of the most effective counterterrorism units in the world.
Hit me with it. What kind of shit have these guys been involved in?
One of their early operations was Operation Urgent Fury in Grenada back in 1983. It was a pretty quick and dirty invasion, but Delta played a key role in securing some strategic objectives.
So they basically went in, kicked some ass, and got the job done.
Yep, they earned a Joint Meritorious Unit Award for their actions in Grenada, but it was a relatively small-scale operation compared to some of their later missions.
Yeah, what else you got?
A few years later, in 1989, Delta was involved in Operation Just Cause in Panama. Their main objective was capturing the dictator Manuel Noriega, who was a real piece of shit. Drug trafficking, money laundering, human rights abuses, you name it.
So they were going after a real-life supervillain.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And they pulled off some seriously badass missions during that operation. One of the most notable was the Modelo prison hostage rescue. Noriega's goons had taken a bunch of American hostages, and Delta storms the prison under heavy fire, freed the hostages, and captured Noriega.
Damn, that sounds intense. Talk about a high-pressure situation.
It was. And they were awarded a Valorous Unit Award for their actions in Panama.
So they're racking up the medals, taking down dictators, and rescuing hostages. These guys are like the real-life A-team.
But not every mission goes as smoothly. One of their most challenging operations was Operation Gothic Serpent in Somalia in 1993. You've probably heard of it. It's the Black Hawk Down incident.
Oh, yeah, that one's infamous. Shit got real ugly in Mogadishu, didn't it?
It did. Delta operators, along with other special ops units, were tasked with capturing some high-value targets from a Somali warlord's militia. But things went sideways fast. They got caught in a massive firefight in the middle of the city. 2 Black Hawk helicopters were shot down, and it turned into a desperate fight for survival.
Yeah, I remember seeing that movie. It was intense as hell. Not exactly a shining moment for U.S. forces.
It was a complex and chaotic situation, a real shit show. Delta Force and the Rangers fought like hell, but they took heavy casualties. It was a reminder that even the best trained, most elite soldiers can find themselves in situations where they're outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting for their lives.
Respect. So what about the war on terror? What kind of role has Delta Force played in all that?
Oh, they've been front and center in the war on terror. They've been deployed to both Afghanistan and Iraq, conducting all sorts of classified missions, from hunting down high-value targets to rescuing hostages to training local forces.
So basically they've been busy as fuck, kicking terrorist ass all over the globe.
You got it. And they've received numerous presidential unit citations for their actions in both Afghanistan and Iraq.
Okay, but what about specifics? What kind of missions are we talking about here?
Well, a lot of it is still classified, but we do know that they played a major role in the hunt for Osama bin Laden, and they've been instrumental in dismantling terrorist networks in the Middle East and Africa.
So they're like the ultimate Ghostbusters, tracking down these shadowy figures that most of us don't even know exist.
It's a dangerous and demanding job, but they do it with incredible skill and dedication.
Right, spill the tea. What's the most badass mission these guys have pulled off in recent years?
Yeah.
Something that'll make our listeners' jaws drop.
One of the most high-profile missions was the raid on Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's compound in 2019. Baghdadi, as you know, was the leader of ISIS, a real fucking monster responsible for countless atrocities.
Yeah, that was huge news at the time. Didn't that mission also involve a badass dog?
It did. A Belgian Malinois named Conan became a bit of a celebrity after that mission. He was part of the Delta team that stormed Baghdadi's compound, and he reportedly chased Baghdadi down a tunnel before he detonated a suicide vest.
Damn. Talk about a four-legged hero. So how did the raid itself go down?
Well, it was a textbook Delta Force operation. They flew in under cover of darkness, infiltrated the compound, and engaged the enemy. Baghdadi, realizing he was cornered, detonated his suicide vest, killing himself and 3 of his children. The Delta team suffered a few minor casualties, but they achieved their objective. Baghdadi was dead, And ISIS had lost its leader.
Holy shit, that's some straight-up Hollywood action right there. These guys are like real-life superheroes taking down villains and saving the day.
It's not quite that simple,
Yeah.
but there's no doubt that Delta Force plays a vital role in keeping the world safe from terrorism.
All right, so we've talked about their history, their training, their missions, but let's get real for a second. What's the cost of all this badassery? I mean, these guys are putting their lives on the line every day. What kind of toll does that take on them?
It's a heavy burden. These guys see some seriously fucked up shit. They lose friends, they deal with constant danger and stress, and they have to make life or death decisions on a regular basis.
I can only imagine the kind of mental and emotional scars that leaves. It's got to be tough to come back from that and live a normal life.
It is. A lot of these guys struggle with PTSD, depression, and substance abuse. They've seen things that most people can't even fathom.
Damn. Makes you realize that freedom isn't free.
Yeah.
There are people out there like these Delta Force operators who are paying a very high price to keep us safe.
That's right. And it's important to remember that these guys are not just killing machines. They're human beings with families, friends, and lives outside the battlefield. They're making incredible sacrifices to protect our country and our way of life.
So what does all this mean for our listener? You know, the average Joe or Jane sitting at home listening to this podcast. Why should they give a shit about Delta Force?
Well, I think it's important to understand that there are men and women out there who are putting their lives on the line every day to protect our freedom and our way of life. Delta Force is a symbol of that commitment, that dedication to protecting us from the shit we don't even want to know about. They operate in a world of shadows, a world where the stakes are incredibly high, and the decisions they make can have life or death consequences.
Yeah, it's heavy shit. They're the silent guardians.
Yeah.
The watchful protectors. The goddamn Batman of the real world.
Exactly. And while we may never know the full extent of their sacrifices or the details of their missions, we can appreciate their courage, their skill, and their unwavering dedication to duty.
Damn right. So for all you F-bomb droppers out there who are thinking, hey, maybe I could be a Delta operator, let's be real for a second. What do you think it takes, mentally and physically, to make it through their selection and training? Could you cut it? Be honest, no bullshit.
I'm just going to lay it out there. It takes a rare breed to become a Delta operator. We're not just talking about physical strength and endurance, although that's obviously a huge part of it. You need the mental toughness to withstand the pressure, the intelligence to adapt to constantly changing situations, and the emotional resilience to deal with the trauma and loss that comes with the job.
It's not for the faint of heart, that's for damn sure.
Not at all.
Yeah.
These guys are the elite of the elite. They represent the very best of what the human spirit is capable of. They're a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there are people out there who are willing to stand up and fight for what's right, to put their lives on the line for others. It's pretty damn inspiring if you ask me.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So there you have it, F-bomb droppers. Delta Force, the real deal. A group of warriors. Operating in a world of shadows. Protecting us from the shit we don't even want to know about. They're the tip of the spear. The silent guardians. The goddamn badasses who keep us safe while we sleep soundly in our beds.
They're the embodiment of courage, skill, and sacrifice. A testament to the human capacity for both good and evil.
And that's a wrap on this deep dive into Delta Force. We hope you learned something new today. And maybe gained a little more respect for the men and women who put their lives on the line every day to keep us safe.
Stay frosty out there.
And remember, you magnificent bastards, freedom isn't free.